Is the black vote going to completely abandon Joe Biden? Well, it sure seems like the left is behaving like that. So we'll continue to cover that story for you as well. I mean, listen, we're heading into Iowa. And so as we head into Iowa, there is a lot of very, very big news stories to continue to cover. Now, I've been talking about this, what I would say was a train wreck of a interview with Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, and Margaret Brennan. And so when we talk about what is going on the southern border and how this interview, and if you missed the last segment, I'm sorry that you missed it, but there's a lot of great audio where she's just asking, you know, as a narrative peddler, she's asking questions that clearly give an indication that she is supportive of Joe Biden and Alejandro Mayorkas, and actually defending Alejandro Mayorkas. And so part of what she said is, look, the Democrats and Joe Biden, they want the money. The Border Patrol says they want the money. Why don't you give them the money? And Johnson was absolutely right when he said, well, the reason why we don't give them the money is because the problem here is the policy. You clean up the policy, number one, you probably need a lot less money. But number two, you clean up the policy and you protect our border, then we'll go ahead and give you that money. But there's no point in, you know, throwing good money after bad. And that is exactly what the Biden administration is trying to do. And so then the big question is, okay, so do we go ahead and give the president the money? Then he can claim some sort of a victory on the southern border and everybody gets a kumbaya moment. BS. There's absolutely no kumbaya moment here. And so this is one of the questions that was asked. And this is, again, an interview with Margaret Brennan and also Speaker of the House Mike Johnson. Here's part of what she had to say. Listen.
Secretary Mayorkas, since he took office, to enforce the law, to do his job, and he's done exactly the opposite. He's testified untruthfully before Congress repeatedly.
But why focus the congressional resources on going ahead with an impeachment when they could be dealing with the actual issues here on the ground?
Margaret, hello. Problem, Margaret, is that they're not dealing with the issues on the southern border. You see what I mean about narrative peddling? That's what she's doing. Because that statement right there assumes that there's some sort of enforcement going on the southern border, and there's really not. There's really not. So she can sit here and try and defend Alejandro Mayorkas and Joe Biden, but there is no defense.
Our Homeland Security Committee has done its job. They have a constitutional responsibility, a legal responsibility to investigate what is happening with the agency that they have oversight for. They've done that for a year, very methodically, carefully, in detail, and they've documented all that. I believe Secretary Mayorkas is an abject failure, but it's not because of incompetence. I believe he has done this intentionally. I think these are intentional policy decisions that he's made.
Yeah, and remember that Mayorkas is up for impeachment hearings this week, and so she does continue with this interview. This might be the most infuriating of all of the audio clips that I have from Margaret Brennan, where she talks about the meaning of the border being secure.
He stood in front of my committee on multiple occasions and insisted that the border is closed and secure when everyone in America knows it's not true. He's not a good faith partner.
That's also a semantic argument, you know.
How is that a semantic argument? That's a semantic argument. No, it's not. It's literally open. And there's millions of people coming across, so that is clearly not a semantic argument. Good Lord, man. How does this woman have any credibility? You know what's amazing is these are people that are supposedly right at the networks. And so they are theoretically at the top of their profession. And yet she is sitting here saying, well, that's semantics. There's nothing semantic about 7 million people coming across our southern border. It's just insane. It is just absolutely insane.
He stood in front of my committee on multiple occasions and insisted that the border is closed and secure when everyone in America knows it's not true. He's not a good faith
That's
partner.
also a semantic argument. You know
No,
because
that's a matter of objective fact, and he has lied to Congress repeatedly.
well, that is a matter of semantics in terms of people being apprehended, as you know, coming here, and once they're apprehended, then say they want to claim asylum.
Again, is she super texters? Is she lying? Is she willfully stupid? Is she just, peddling a narrative? Does she know how dumb she sounds right now?
Secretary Mayorkas has been to the border. He's talked to the same officials that we have. He knows that this border is not secure. No one here
But
believes it is.
you're not saying that all these officials you met with on the ground who are doing the tough work here aren't actually performing the jobs they're required to do?
Oh, they're doing heroic
Okay.
work, but it's an impossible situation that's been created by the secretary of their department.
So there you go. She also asked about January 6th, and she called Mike Johnson an election denier. Again, remember, this is what it's going to be about.
2021, you were the lawmaker who circulated the legal brief known as the Texas Amicus Brief, challenging the 2020 election outcome in a number of states, which by CBS editorial standards makes you an election denier.
That's nonsense.
Well, can I get you on the record on that?
I've always been consistent on the record. Did you read the brief? Did you get a chance to read what we filed with the Supreme Court?
Well, I have read extensively some criticisms of that.
You read commentary about the brief, but not what we submitted to the court.
But
right?
Did you hear what just happened? So he asks her, "Did you read the brief?" And she's like, "No, I've read a lot of criticism or commentary on the brief by your own side," I would say to Margaret Brennan. You see what happened there? I mean, that was a great moment for Mike Johnson. Did you read the brief? Do you understand about the states changing the election laws outside of the state legislature? Oh, no, I just read that everybody didn't like it and that you're an election denier by CBS editorial standards. That's what I know. Oh, Lord.
Did you read the brief? Did you get a chance to read what we filed with the Supreme Court?
Well, I have read extensively some criticisms of that.
You read commentary about the brief, but not what we submitted to the court.
But
right?
you recognize that President Biden won the 2020 election. Can you just put that aside as an
President Biden was
issue?
certified as the winner of the election. He took the oath of office. He's been the president for 3 years. The argument that we presented to the court, which is our only avenue to do so, was that the Constitution was clearly violated in the 2020 election.
This sort of game that Margaret Brennan is playing with Speaker Mike Johnson, it is just obviously infuriating. What he is talking about as far as January 6th is, as I said, he's right, of course, about all those states that changed election laws outside of their state legislatures. And so that's what he and many others mean about the Constitution. These are the same types of people, by the way, that believe that they can unilaterally take Donald Trump off of the ballots in their state. But here's what Johnson says about the reasoning behind their election denier status. Here's what he had to say. Again, Mike Johnson.
It's Article 2, Section 1, and anyone can Google it and read it for themselves. The system by which you choose electors to elect the President of the United States must be done by the individual states, and the system must be ratified by the state legislatures. That is language, plain language out of the Constitution.
Have issues with the validity of the 2020 election.
Anyone who Googles,
even though
anyone who pulls up the Constitution,
majority. Sorry, go ahead.
Anyone who pulls up the Constitution on their smartphone and reads Article 2, Section 1 of the Constitution has to agree with what I just told you. The Constitution was violated in the run-up to the 2020 election. Not always in bad faith, but in the aftermath of COVID, many states changed their election laws in ways that violated that plain language. That's just a fact.
That is just a fact. So now I guess Mike Johnson, again, he's back to being considered a threat to democracy. Speaking of which, way back in the 5 o'clock hour, I played you some audio from Joe Biden's big speech over the last couple of days. This was Biden kicking off his presidential campaign, and he had a lot to say about Donald Trump.
Today, we're here to answer the most important of questions. Is democracy still America's sacred cause?
Golf clap.
I mean it. This is not rhetorical, academic, or hypothetical. Whether democracy is still America's sacred cause is the most urgent question of our time. And it's what the 2024 election is all about.
Well, that's what he wants the election to be all about. Donald Trump. But in reality, I don't believe that it will be. Joe Biden and the left, they are desperately trying to frame this as Donald Trump being obsessed with the past. And while that may be true, so is Joe Biden and the Democrats. And they're obsessed with the past. They're obsessed with Donald Trump because the last 3 years of our past has been horrible. And Joe Biden knows that.
The choice is clear. Donald Trump's campaign is about him, not America, not you. Donald Trump's campaign is obsessed with the past, not the future. He's willing to sacrifice our democracy, put himself in power. Our campaign is different.
So you heard that, right? When he says about Donald Trump,
put himself in power.
Put himself in power. Now, I'm sorry, I hate to, somebody might want to clue Biden in, but Donald Trump is participating in a primary over on, and a legit primary. I mean, you've got Trump and you've got two very previously popular governors in Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley. Not going to put Chris Christie in there. But it's a legit primary going on the other side of the aisle, on the Republican side. Yet Joe Biden and the Democrats, they're not having a legit primary. You've got 70% of the Democrats that want someone else to run for the Democrats. Yet it's Donald Trump.
Put himself in power.
That's going to put himself in power. No, Joe, that's you, and you're trying to take Donald Trump. You and the Democrats are trying to take Donald Trump off of the ballot. I mean, his speech on, I think it was Friday, was just full of bloviating and lies. There's no other way to say it. But you see, what you didn't hear during his speech is anything that had to do with his first 2 years, his first 3 years. And here was the thing that I thought, it's all over the place. I'm hearing from you folks on the Super Text line. Thank you. One of the things that I thought was interesting is there's a lot of conservatives that are like, oh my gosh, did you see that Jill Biden had to come out? He looked confused and he had to be let off the stage. He didn't know where he was. Well, Biden completely forgot about his first 3 years in office. I'm a little more concerned about that. And by the way, I'm just going to tell you, I don't think that this was a case of Joe Biden wandering. I mean, maybe some people will say that we'll have a disagreement. I think that Biden, he wrapped up his speech. He looked to his right. He was waiting for the first lady to come out, and that's what they do. And she comes out. I think she was a little late coming out. And so then she grabbed his hand and, let him off of the stage. But to me, the far, far bigger story is that Biden went on for 32 minutes and didn't mention one accomplishment. It was all about Donald Trump.
And our campaign is about preserving and strengthening our American democracy.
Right. You mean yours, actually, where Donald Trump is not on the ballot and the borders are wide open. So that in future elections, you can count on all of those, newly amnestied illegal aliens, give them the opportunity to vote. It's about cultivating a whole new voting bloc. And of course, to me, that's a fact. Here's more from Joe Biden.
We all know who Donald Trump is. The question we have to answer is, who are we? That's what's at stake. Who are we? In the year ahead, as you talk to your family and friends, cast your ballots. The power is in your hands. After all we've been through in our history, from independence to civil war to 2 world wars to a pandemic to insurrection, I refuse to believe that in 2024 we Americans will choose to walk away from what's made us the greatest nation in the history of the world. Freedom, liberty, democracy is still a sacred cause.
Well,
so
that
anyway.
Is
What's that?
That is a resounding applause.
It's so funny. I don't know how many people were in. I made the joke earlier. It was like a golf clap, it's very polite.
He's
and,
obvious.
Donald Trump, he goes out there and they're doing the wave and, You know, they're just going crazy for him.
He's obviously going to need the mainstream media.
Well, I don't know how much you've been paying attention today, Ken. I know you got your own thing going on over there, but I mean, I've had 2 or 3 different examples of Jake Tapper and Margaret Brennan.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Who just, you know, narrative peddlers, liars, narrative peddlers, but they're not looking for the truth.